So my name is Jon Mesh. I'm a product manager on Google Optimize and Google Optimize 360. If you're not familiar with those, we'll talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation. But these are Google's brand new A/B testing and personalization tools built on top of Google Analytics. And I also want to introduce Andrew Duffle. He is the Director of Analytics at APMEX. And Andrew and APMEX are one of our favorite customers, and not the least of which is because they have a giant vault full of gold and platinum and silver in their basement. So we love doing customer visits there. But a lot of the reasons that we love working with APMEX is that they just do amazing things with a really small team. And so we're really pleased to have him in this webinar today. Now, I want to remind you before we go on that we do have a Twitter handle, Google Analytics, and a hashtag Optimize, so you can follow the conversation on Twitter if you're there. But Andrew, maybe you can tell us just a little bit more about yourself and what you do at APMEX and what APMEX does as a whole.
Sure. Thank you, John, and thank all of you for joining us. APMEX is the leading precious metal dealer online. So to your point, we do sell gold and silver. We do it 100% online, so very much an e-commerce business. We've been in business for 15 years, and we're excited to be number 42 on the Internet Retailer list. That puts APMEX ahead of companies like Lands' End and Nike. We do about $1 billion plus annually, and we only have 230 employees, half of which work in operations. We're a very, very lean company. We focus on e-commerce and customer service. Kind of my forte and what I do is I lead the analytics and data science teams. We're focused on customer experience and applying data science concepts across the company and across the website just for the general betterment of the company. We're very grateful for the work that we do with Google and couldn't be as successful without them. Again, thank you for joining us, and back to you, John.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. So Andrew, a little bit later, will tell us about some of what they've done with Optimize, but more generally what the culture of optimization is shaping out to be at APMEX. And today, that's really a lot of what we want to talk about. Today's not a conversation about tools. It's not a conversation about the really deep nitty-gritty of how to do that that one detailed experience. We want to talk a lot about the other half of optimization beyond the tool. We want to talk about what it means to be in this data-rich world and why it's really important to have a culture of optimization. And we'll talk a little bit about how to start the shift from what you're doing today, or maybe there's a lot of friction today about really trying to spread optimization across your company. And we want to encourage you to start that shift, and we'll tell you a little bit how. And then at the end, that's where Andrew will come back on and tell us a little bit more about what APMEX has done to really push forward that culture of optimization. So let's get started by talking a little bit about what it means to live in a data-rich world. I'm always fascinated by some of the terms that come up in technology and in industry, and I think many of us saw for quite a few years the buzzwords of the day were things like big data, and everybody kind of has a sense of what that might mean, but obviously it means a lot of different things. And I think what was really interesting to me is that as a result of that trend of big data, people focus so much on getting all of that data that the problems have changed. We have so much data now that it's hard to make sense of all of that data. We've got data flooding in 24/7 from billions of global users and devices, and often there's just not much insight attached to it. Now, Google Analytics is no stranger to lots of data. Every day, Google Analytics processes 500 billion digital moments across devices. It's massive, and this trend is only growing. We see things like page views, app downloads, other events that are important to your business. And of course, having this data is really important in its own way, and it's great to see our customers sending us this data, but because this is, of course, a prerequisite to making use of that data. The problem is with all that data, many companies don't know how to make sense of all of it. Where do you begin? And so having all of that data can actually become a problem if you haven't figured out how to make use of it. How many of you have had a situation where you've come across a data stream and no one seems to actually know where that data came from or what it even means? This is what I'm talking about. There's lots of problems like this. There's another set of problems where it's just hard to find insights from these data because there's so much. Maybe you don't have the right tools in place to actually pull out insights from that data, or you don't even know where to start because there is so much data. Then there's the question of action. We believe pretty firmly at Google that data without the ability to do something with it is just numbers. It's not really all that valuable. So how do we help take action? How do we all use that data to its greatest effect? And then finally, things like, will that action actually be impactful? I think data is often still just used to measure results of actions taken for other reasons. Maybe it's just an opinion of the highest paid person in the company, whatever it might be. And so because those actions aren't data-driven themselves, the results don't always turn out. Now, to be very sure, there are bright spots out there. Many of you, I think, are really the ones driving the beginning of this kind of revolution. There's a small analysis team here. There's a data scientist there. Maybe there are a few A/B tests or personalized experiences running on some small part of a company's digital footprint. But it's really not enough. There's incredibly rich data that could really help drive many of a company's decisions across the entire company. But if it's to be valuable, that data really has to be broadly accessible, insightful, and actionable. And that's really what we're here to talk about today, because we see that many of today's most successful businesses are turning to a new approach. They're really trying to build a culture of optimization, not just one team, not just one person, but really trying to spread this across their companies. And so many of you might have heard of the term growth teams. I know this is something that comes up in companies like Uber. They've kind of famous for one of their growth teams. And fundamentally, these are teams that are really all about this culture of optimization. And it's still obviously starting small, but we really want to encourage you to take that across your entire business. Because these are teams that are really data-driven, not just data measuring and not just kind of like data after. And they're optimization-oriented. So let's talk a little bit about more what that kind of culture looks like. What is a culture of optimization? Well, in our view, a culture of optimization is where everyone in an organization is using data to test and learn as a means to improve the customer experience every day. And it's really that growth mindset. It's focused on improving the customer experience across an entire organization. Because it's not just the website team or the app team that's talking to your customers, right? Many of you have call centers, or you have emails, or you have Twitter, or you have social in other places, or you have an online presence or an offline presence as well. And all of those touch points really matter. And that's one of the things I love hearing about from APMEX is they've done a really amazing job of integrating this data across all the way from their website to their call center. And they have that kind of experience that's really seamless across all of these different touch points. Now, this isn't just monthly analytics reporting. It's not a siloed optimization team. It's not just a few insights here and there. This is everyone in the company really shifting that mindset to be data-driven and action-oriented. And at the end of the day, it's about knowing your customer and using data well across those interactions within your company. Now, why is this important? Why are we talking about this? Why should you care? Well, your CMOs probably do. 86% of CMOs and senior marketing executives believe they're going to own that end-to-end customer experience by 2020. Now, this is from The Economist. And so we just see this trend. We see marketing becoming more and more strategic across the entire company. And it's no longer just about, ad buying and content. It's really owning that entire experience. Now, one of my favorite analogies here, and one of the reasons that we talk about the culture of optimization, is actually just take a coffee shop, for example. You look at a coffee shop, and one of the canonical examples of personalization is the fact that a barista might know your name and know your favorite drink. So every time you go there, it's like Cheers, right? Everybody knows your name. And you go there, and they know your drink, they know how you're doing, they kind of see your mood, and they can really respond to that. And that's a really amazing experience. That's not the CEO of that company delivering that experience, is it? That's the barista. That's the person who's kind of on the ground day to day. And we really believe in the same kind of model in the digital world where you have to develop that culture of optimization because so many of your employees within a company are touching your customers, are talking to them, are working with them. And so if we can encourage that, encourage people to really be striving for that data-driven, personalized, caring experience across all the different channels, that's what we're trying to get to. So what does this mean? How do we get to this culture of optimization? First, we're talking a lot about being data-driven. So not just data afterward, not just reporting, but actually using that data to find insights and to drive decisions. Of course, it's not the only thing that matters. There's lots of other subjective things and lots of other types of research that come to play. But use that data really well Use it to generate insights. Use it to fuel exploration, and then use it to drive decisions, not have it just be after the fact. The next piece that we look at with a culture of optimization is really testing everything and collaborating widely to get the whole company involved. Now, why is this important? Really, again, this is where it comes down to just understanding all of the different customer touch points and making sure that as you're deploying that new feature that you've worked so hard to build, that you actually know the value of that. Is it actually doing what you think it's going to do? I can't tell you how many companies I hear deploy new features all the time, and they actually don't know the impact of it. It's possible that that new feature could have just, confused the user experience and made that product actually worse in some way. But if you're just looking at, the metrics over time, you're not necessarily seeing a really good understanding of how that feature is impacting your business results. So yes, this can be as simple as just sending out some emails with different subject lines or swapping out an image on a home page. But yeah, what about that big project you just spent 4 months working on with your engineering team? Figure out what the impact actually was of that kind of feature. Okay, the next part about that culture side is really about evangelism. It's about sharing those results widely. Share your insights on what you worked on, what worked for you, and just as important, what didn't work. When you run a test like that, when you are just being data-driven, when you're making decisions, you're not always going to hit a knockout of the park every time. There's plenty of times where a test doesn't perform like you wanted it to, or some new feature just didn't do its job in the way that you thought it would. So dive deeper. Figure out what happened. Use that data to really derive insight about that particular test or feature's performance, and then share it. And this is really one of the most critical things about building this culture is get people involved, get other people involved, help people become strategic, and help people really use those experiences and those tests to understand more about your customers and how they behave. And this is also a great way just to show the value of your efforts. So we're a big fan of just starting small and helping to share those results widely to get adoption across the company. All right, so the final thing that we wanted to talk about with creating a culture is actually the idea of sourcing ideas from everywhere. We talked about the barista, right? The barista probably has a lot of great ideas about how you can make that experience better for each individual user. And in the same way, the person who's writing the email or who's talking to the customer in store or who's manning the chat window probably has a lot of great ideas. Take ideas from everywhere. If everybody has a strong opinion about different things, of course you're going to have to prioritize all of these different ideas, but it's amazing how the greatest ideas can come from the least expected places. So don't just share results out. Crowdsource those test ideas, crowdsource those insights. Try to really open up your data and let people look into that and find insight there and then share that back in the other direction. All right, so that's just a quick overview of how we think of what a culture of optimization is. And actually at this point, I really want to, we're going to go to a poll and we'd love to ask you a question. So, what is your biggest challenge in getting more people to embrace testing and personalization at your company? So we're going to stop for just a minute and let you have a moment to answer this poll question. Really curious to see what everyone says here. All right, we've got some good results coming in. This is really interesting. Establishing processes is one of the most important things. Yeah, that's a great call out. We'll have to spend some more time on that later. I think one of the great things about testing is that you can start small, but you're absolutely right. As you get bigger, establishing those processes becomes really important. We'll find some good ways to share some tips later on what kinds of things that you can do to establish those processes. But certainly a few things just to throw out there that we've seen. Again, find a great crowdsourcing tool that people can kind of submit ideas. Maybe that's some surveys tool or some other shared document. And then also from a process perspective, do your best to be really transparent about your prioritization of the different things that you're doing to run tests or personalized experiences at your company. And you could do that in a really collaborative manner, right? Find a good scoring system that you really like to figure out how can we really drive the best business results along with that process. All right, so for now we're going to go on just a little bit more. All right, so we want to talk a brief amount about how to start that shift. Maybe you're a small team, or maybe that you're someone at a higher level of your company who's really interested in how do we get started with this. And I think this is a really interesting topic because we hear from a lot of teams that the word personalization and the word optimization, those can often be very scary. And it's like, oh, yes, we have to personalize every touch point from day one. And that's massive. It's very, very large. And I really discourage companies from doing too much of that because the shock of that can sometimes mean that you don't necessarily change your culture to really support that in the long run. And so one of the things that we always encourage people to do is just start simple, start small. Try testing and optimizing small things as you're getting started. That can be something like just doing a simple headline change, again, a subject line of an email, various things like that. So maybe if you're doing a huge web page redesign, that might not be the very, very first place to start. Obviously, there's always some degree of risk when you're doing some big redesign, but figure out how you can, again, start small, find wins, start evangelizing that, and then build up to some of those bigger types of tests and personalized experiences. All right, the next thing that we want to talk about is, again, proving that incremental value. So when you start small, when you take that headline test or that image test or that call to action test, figure out how to drive the most value from one of those things. And again, just build up over time. Start sharing those results out. Show people how simple things can make big changes. And do it lots, right? Test lots until you find some of those great results. Make sure that you learn as best as possible for the things that aren't working as well. And really try to share that out more broadly so that people are seeing you build up value over time. And as you build up that value, you can also gain trust, right? People will see that you're generating value from your efforts and will trust you more to find bigger things that you can generate even more value on. The next one here, scale those successes to other teams. Now, obviously, there's a lot of different ways to do this, and this can mean a lot of different things. So we've talked a lot about sharing those results widely, and I think that's one great way to do it, right? If you involve your IT department, make sure you call them out as being really instrumental in the success of what you've done. Help them become more strategic and more valued. But beyond that as well, if you find an interesting test result on one platform or something that you found particularly valuable, help someone who's running a different part of your organization or a different channel to try testing something very similar. Sometimes that's a great way to scale results and really interesting tests and optimize experiences across the company is take something that worked on one platform and try it again on another one. It won't always work, but a lot of the times you can really find the things that are going to drive that customer experience that way. And the more that you do that, that's where you're going to get these bigger commitments from people as you're getting people involved in your organization, as you're kind of involving them in the process of testing and involving them in the value and sharing that value widely. That's where you're going to see more and more opportunity. All right, we want to do another quick poll here. From the perspective of the team that's leading this now, who's actually leading your A/B testing and optimization efforts? Is that marketing and communications? Is it someone who owns a digital team? Is that a product management team that maybe owns the website or some growth team or something like that? Is it an analytics team, or is this involved with engineering in the IT department, or something else entirely? So take a moment, answer that poll. I'll come back in 1 second here. All right. So it looks like we've got a good mix here of marketing communications driving most of that. The digital and website team is kind of the second there, and then the analytics team is the third here. And this is really great. You know, it's awesome to see all these different organizations coming together to drive this. And I think this is one of the reasons that, we're really excited about this culture is so many different people are excited about optimization and excited about really driving this forward. It's not going to be just one team. I was in a panel just yesterday where we were talking about who should be in charge of all of this? And the reality is that it's not any one person, not any one team. Again, this really can involve your entire company. And so how do you help collaborate across these different organizations that are all doing these things together? How can you really have a shared vision for how to make that a better customer experience? So I encourage you, again, to do these things as like starting small, doing lots of evangelism, trying to get buy-in across teams for some of these bigger experiences and tests. Okay, well, at this point, we're actually going to go right ahead to APMEX, And we're going to hear a little bit more from Andrew at APMEX about what they're doing there and how they've built a culture of optimization. Again, they've done a great job of starting small and really building out over time. But before we let Andrew jump in here, I do want to tell you just really briefly about what we've done with Google Optimize and Optimize 360. We focused a lot on making this really easy to do this testing, make it really easy to get started. Again, that's something we believe a lot in, is how can you just cross that line into that very first test? And so we've got a lot of integration with Google Analytics to make that really easy to get started. Secondarily, of course, it's really important as you're being data-driven to adapt to that. And so we focused a lot on an advanced Bayesian statistics approach that really helps you make smarter and faster decisions. We want to make sure that you're getting the most value out of that test and that those results are going to hold in the long term. And then finally, with personalization, we're really excited about what we've done here to be able to take those segments out of Google Analytics as audiences and use those on the very first hit of that customer's experience. And I think Andrew is going to tell us a little bit about that as well with what they've done at APMEX. So with that, this is Andrew, and this is one of my favorite quotes. This actually, I believe, came out of our case study with APMEX. And I thought this was really telling of many customers and company situations. Andrew said this: "We refuse to believe that our customers' experiences should be limited by our resources." And I think they are really the epitome of that. They've done that incredibly well. So Andrew, why don't you go ahead and take it away? Maybe you can remind everybody, if anybody joined in late, a little bit more about your role at APMEX, and then go ahead and tell us about your culture of optimization.
Sure. So again, I lead the data science and analytics department here at APMEX. We are really responsible for applying data in new and innovative ways to drive the customer experience. This case study is kind of the first little thing that we did coming in, and we wanted to build that culture, and we wanted to start off with something simple but very impactful. And so if you haven't read the case study yet, highly recommend it. But really small steps. So kind of there on the screen, you see recommended products and a awareness banner there. We just kind of started off with that, and APMEX is so market driven, and depending on what the market does will dictate our traffic. But these spot price pages are some of our most impactful pages because we are the authority on precious metals. And so when the market moves, we could get upwards of 500,000 page views on this. It used to be one of our lowest converting pages. Kind of what we found is APMEX is known for great customer service on the phone, and we can walk a customer through it and not make them feel overwhelmed. When they were coming to the site and they're new to investing or new to the site, there's thousands of products to pick from, and you just didn't know where to start. One of the biggest things that we did was just simplify it and say, hey, these are two very basic products that are easy to invest in. They're highly liquid. These are a great starting point for a first-time investor. And in doing so, you can see the site conversion rate went up 24%. Our new customer acquisition went up 9%. So overall, very big numbers, but in the grand scheme of things, even a little number on 500,000 visits could be very impactful for us. Very, very basic test that we did. Huge impacts for us. We've adopted it into our culture here at APMEX. And in fact, if you go to the pages, that's actually what you will see now. So we've put it into production and we keep building on top of it. So that iterative approach that Jon was talking about. And really that was our launching point for building this culture where everybody's opinion matters, and together we come up with a great idea, and then we can go test small pieces of it at a time and just keep building on top of it. Before we move on from this slide, I do want to share a promo code with you for APMEX.com just to help you remember this case study and keep going back to it, because building this culture is very relevant. So if you go to APMEX.com through Saturday, you can use the promo code Google APMEX, and you'll be able to get a free half-ounce shark with any order over $100. So I encourage you to use that. We'll email out the promo code, but it's just a small token to keep on your desk that says, keep testing, keep optimizing. It's a culture shift, and it's hard to do, but over time it builds, and it just keeps compounding itself. So moving on the next couple of slides, we're going to talk about a few key points that we had a takeaway from over the last couple of years of really building our culture. And the first thing is test everything from call to action buttons to personalized home pages. So that is very, very important. Just be willing to test things that are so far out of your comfort zone, but it might matter to your customer. We have very broad examples where we go out and we'll look at other sites that are successful, and successful sites are successful for a reason. And so we'll mimic them. In fact, Nike.com is the inspiration for a lot of our product pages and our category sort orders. And truly, when we tested it, just kind of to give you an idea, it did lead us to a younger demographic. It took us a while to get there, and it was small steps at a time, but being willing to test anything, don't think you have the answers. There's no bad test in our book. As long as you learn something from each one, then each one is relevant. So again, just reiterating that nothing's off limits to test, but test small things.
Andrew, I'm wondering if you could tell us, are there any particular aspects of things that you've tested? What was like the most surprising thing that you tested that produced a bigger result than you anticipated?
I think our color scheme on our website, we completely changed that, and we didn't go from red to blue, but we did take blue to a different shade of blue, and it was very surprising how people tended to interact more with different areas of our website. So that was very surprising to us. We were very, I'd say not very modern in our color scheme. When we did it, we really didn't change anything else, just the scheme of what color the text was really. And it really led us to higher conversion rate. It was incremental, so it's not a huge number, but the site looks better, it feels better. You feel like you're shopping with a more modern company. And it was really surprising to us because we've had a lot of graphics people tell us, no, this blue is the way to go. But when we could put it in a testing setting and just say, all right, let's test it and see what happens. And I think everybody was astounded by the results of it.
Nice, thanks.
So moving on to the second bullet point, run well-planned experiments with clear results and driven action. This is very relevant because I can think of a few times when we were so eager when we first started that we didn't define the goal or the problem to begin with. We just wanted to test something. And so we put out a test on very short notice, and we'd run it and we'd get results, and we'd have enough to compile really a good analysis. And then we look back and we said, well, what were we really measuring success on? And so that can be hard, and it's always fun to test, and we love testing, and we love taking people's ideas from all across the industry, even outside our industry and in customer service. But in the end, is it something that really drives customer to a better experience or drives conversion rate or time on site? Is there an impact to the company? And so if you focus on the clear results, and I would highly suggest only picking one or two metrics that are going to determine success. So trying to improve everything all at once is unmanageable, and you'll get contradictory results sometimes. So pick one or two that's going to define success. State those before you start. So state the problem, state what success looks like. Optimize, for instance, does a very, very good job of telling you when you have enough data to actually draw a conclusion and what relevance it has to your website. Highly recommend that product. Even more, building the culture, though, is about saying, hey, I have this problem or I have this idea, and this is what success looks like. So do that before the fact. Don't try and do it during, after. It just you can't build on top of yourself if you do it that way. So moving on to point 3, pay attention to what the numbers say. I can't tell you how many times I've had people go in with a preconceived notion, and they spend more time trying to make that preconceived notion be correct. When they look at the actual numbers with an open mind and being objective, then it might tell you something different. Your customers will always give you the feedback in a testing environment. It's great for us. We've had multiple times where we create a segment, and whether that's in email or on-site or making phone calls, and we'll have the control where we don't do anything different, and then the test group we're going to test. And a lot of times we'll see that the control group wins, and it's not that we're wrong, it's just that we were doing something right the whole time. Don't get caught up in thinking that you have to change something just to change it, but it is always relevant to test. Stick to things that are relevant to you, though. I can think of a really good example where we were testing a silver segment, and there's a process that they go through, and it's like an ABC process, and B to us was very irrelevant. So we tried to take them from A to C, and our test group epically failed. It wasn't even close. And in the end, they would all get to C, but we learned from that and learned from the failure that touch point of B really matters to a customer. Even though there's virtually zero value add, it's the concept and how the customer gets to a product or interacts with the site. So pay attention to what it says, create the segments, make sure you have a control, and be willing to accept the numbers as you go, and just continuously measure the numbers, watch the numbers, be open-minded to it. Number 4, keep testing and learning daily and monthly. This kind of builds on the last one. Just keep learning from the numbers and be iterative. So this is where you get into don't try and tackle the world at once. Focus on a few key areas. Keep changing it, tweak it a little bit more when you get a result, and the customer will kind of build the path for you. If you remember back to our case study, actually, great example. So the first time that we went out with that, over on the right-hand side, there's that little pricing banner. And it wasn't on there initially, so we tested only products. So we thought, yeah, if we give them products that are relevant to the industry and highly liquid and easy to comprehend for a new customer, that was enough. And really what we found out is it's not enough. We need to put an awareness banner out there. And even though it's not a deal, so that's not a discount off of our normal price, it's just a price out there for the customer to see. And so the first one wasn't highly successful. The second one, we went out and we said, all right, we got a little bit of an incremental gain. Now let's take a next step. And so we put that next step on there, and you saw the results in the white paper. You can't debate them really, and that was a truly iterative process. Now, this year, we've been really focused on segments of customers, and what we do is we start off with a segment, we identify them, and we set goals for what we want to be able to do with that segment. And so we'll test a little thing, and then we'll go back and we'll put that into production, and then we'll test the next little thing. And it's very interesting what we've built and the shopping experience for the customer. It's really been built for those particular segments, and they've built it themselves. So continuous feedback, continuously learning what works for that segment and building on top of it, and that iterative approach. And then I'd also say going out to the other departments and talking to customer service, for instance. We just ask them, what problems do customers call you with? And we try and identify those and work them into the next test group and say, how can we limit customer service complaints? So learning, testing, gathering data, getting the whole culture involved. The getting everybody in the company to believe in it has been huge for us. And then 5, I think everybody's heard this. Everybody thinks it's cliche, but truly a failure in testing is not a failure as long as you learn something. So a A/B test gives you a platform to test on a small segment, not hugely impactful to the broad population of customers. It's very low cost to do, and you're always going to learn something. So even if it fails, you might have learned, hey, I've been doing something great all these years. Customers really like how I do this. That's been very important for us. I run a department of very high performers, and they're naturally competitive and want to win. And so teaching them that a test or a concept failing is not a failure on you. It's a learning process. And as long as you're getting something from it and building to the next phase, it's good for us. So continue to test. Don't be afraid to throw out concepts that are radical and you just don't know what's going to work until you truly test it, get the culture excited about trying new things and stuff of that nature. So very important. Fail at them. Do it quickly. That's the beauty of a product like Optimize. You can pump out the test and you can fail quickly, and it costs you almost nothing. So can't say it enough. Don't be afraid to fail and build that culture that it's okay to try new things. So John, back over to you.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Andrew, and thank you so much for telling us about some of the really interesting learnings that you've had at APMEX. So at this point, just want to do a quick review, and then we wanted to go to some questions. So, again, from our perspective, one of the big challenges is that in this new data-rich world, marketers have so much data that they have to figure out how to make use of that. So we're really excited and interested in helping you all build that culture of optimization, to be data-driven, to use that data-driven culture to test and to optimize, to really improve that customer experience, not just within one team, but across the entire organization. One of the best ways to do that, again, start small and evangelize your successes, whether that's even finding a winner for a test, whether it's finding something really interesting out of the data, whether it's finding a loser in a test that you learned something really interesting from. Share that widely. Help people really come into that process with you, and then get them involved in return. And then finally, getting people involved is that really critical part. So failing often, learning from those failures, and then sourcing ideas from everywhere. Really figure out what are the people who are in the closest contact with our customers saying, what are the ideas that they have about how to make things better. Andrew, anything you want to add to that before we go to our Q&A?
No, I would echo all of that. Just be willing to test things and approach it with an open mind and a curiosity. We're constantly encouraging our employees to shop other sites and go out to other industries and bring back concepts to us or things that they found interesting. So whether it's a shopping experience on Amazon or Nike or bags.com, we're constantly having printouts of web pages brought to us, or saying, hey, I made an order and I got text message updates from them, and the text message updates were great. So even outside our website, you're surrounded by this giant world of e-commerce and people trying different things. People try them. Some people are successful. We can think of many cases where companies have tried things and it wasn't successful. We congratulate them for trying. We learn from their mistakes. We learn from their successes. And as a industry in e-commerce, we keep evolving forward, whether that's website, email, phone calls, chats, whatever it is. But I would echo, be willing to accept change and accept that we don't have all the answers, but a culture of optimizing and testing can get you a step closer. And that's just kind of what I'd end with there.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And, get involved with communities around this. There's a lot of great places where you can see different testing ideas and different things that people have tried. There's lots of different places that those ideas can come from. All right, so at this point, we've really reached the end of the presentation part of this webinar. We did want to go to Q&A. While we're doing that, if you're interested, I know many of you are chomping at the bit to get access to Optimize. You can learn more about Optimize 360, our premium paid version, at g.co/Optimize360. You can also request an invite for Optimize, which is our free version, at g.co/Optimize. And we'll do our best to kind of help you get to know Optimize and maybe some future sessions or content. For today, it is actually rolling out right now as we speak, but I want to go ahead and go to Q&A for the moment. So let's go ahead and pull that up. Please feel free to type in those questions that you have on the left side of your screen. But it looks like one of the first questions that's here is actually for Andrew. This has a little bit more to do with your website, Andrew. So have you done any tests on both soft and hard calls to action? I see you have orange as the color on your buy/checkout buttons. Since you also have that color on so many of your links and other elements, I was just wondering if that could be confusing for the visitor. Is that something that you've tested, Andrew?
So we have tested it. To your point, you do see that color a lot on our website. We specifically tested the call to action buttons, to your point. We're still actually testing them. We have a test actually running right now that does modify that call to action and how it shows up. So not so much the color, but the scale of it and the shape of it and kind of the interaction of what happens when you do it, whether it's add to cart or buy now, for instance. We do test it. We continuously try and figure out a better way of doing it. One of the early mistakes we kind of made was up at the top where you see the cart there being orange. We changed the color of it and put some other options there that were relevant to customers, and it was actually a where's my order option. We actually cut our cart traffic, so our view cart traffic, drastically. So we instantly pulled down the test and we went back to the old one. But it is a continuous evolution of testing and trying different call to action buttons. That's a very, very relevant use case. We don't have the answer to it, to be honest. So we're still testing and trying to figure it out. And we've probably tried 10 different variations of it at this point, but very, very good use case.
Cool. Thanks, Andrew. I want to answer a couple of the questions that have come in. So many of you are asking, are you getting optimized today, or how quickly is it rolling out? So we are starting the rollout right now. It's probably going to take us a little bit of time. We're not exactly sure how long that's going to be. We want to make sure that really we're providing that best experience and making sure our users are really happy. So I think you'll probably see over the coming next 2 to 4 months in that time frame will be when we'll be going to a full rollout. But we'll have to see how that comes. We dedefinitely welcome you to sign up, and we'll get people involved as quickly as we can. And then one other question that came in here is really around, will this recording be available? So yes, any of you that want to share this with a colleague, we're not going to send the deck out here, but you can definitely go and check out this recording after the fact. Feel free to send that around to anyone who's interested. Andrew, one other question that I saw come in that I thought was interesting. How do you share some of those results within your company? What are some of the methods that you're using to really get people kind of bought into that process?
Sure. Well, we do a couple of different things. So whether it's myself going to executive meetings and talking about it and kind of giving everybody an update of what test is coming down the road, whether that's email or website or whatever, kind of what are we doing, how are we doing it? And that's a very high level, get executives from different departments to be talking about it. We're also huge about all hands meetings, and we'll get up and we'll do really cool things. So we'll pull up the website, and on the fly we may redirect a page and say, hey, anybody search for Silver Eagles lately? And it might take you to an executive's profile on our website or something. And that gets people talking, kind of thinking, oh wow, they can do anything. And then we'll go in and we'll be like, hey, did you know we tested the cart functionality, and just this one little change increased cart checkout by 10%. Things like that. We also maintain a online repository of all the tests. So we're very good at, after the test is ended, win or lose, we roll it up and we tell a story. And so storytelling for analytics and data science is very important. So we can go and we can do any test and it can be the most complicated thing in the world, but if we can't communicate to other departments, especially when it is their idea and customer service comes to us and says, hey, customers call a lot about payment options. How can we test that on our website? So we'll do the test and we communicate back to them and say, hey, it was highly successful. Here's some results for you to share with your team, share with the company, talk about it. Here's the link to our conclusion and what the web pages looked like and where people clicked and stuff of that nature. And just willing to put it all out there and let people have all the data, but kind of walk them through it and tell a story along the way.
Very cool. Thanks so much, Andrew. I appreciate that. I want to answer a couple of questions that are coming in about the optimized interface itself. So one question that's come up, many of you might be familiar with content experiments that was in Google Analytics in the past. And yes, Optimize is really an upgrade of this. It's intended to really be the next generation of testing and personalization from the Google Analytics team. So you don't need to create unique URLs. There's a lot of ability to do just visual editing within the tool and then serve that anywhere on your site. You can still do redirect tests if that's interesting to you. We've got multivariate testing included, a lot of different things there. So while we're not going to show the interface today, I do encourage you all to go check out the site itself. I believe if you go to g.co/optimize360 or in the left side of your window, there's actually a resource list that has a link there. Go check it out there, but we'll also follow up really soon with a broader walkthrough of Optimize and what is inside of Optimize, what it looks like, how it works. So make sure that you join us for that one. All right, let's go ahead and go back to one more question here that came in for Andrew. Andrew, how do you prioritize your tests? You've got so many ideas. What are some of the methods that you use to prioritize those?
Yeah, that is one of the most difficult questions that we get all the time. There's no one right way to do it, and there's not necessarily one better test than another. It's difficult. I encourage you to have meetings that are open forums where anybody can throw ideas up on the board, and as a team you say, all right, let's move forward with this one. We always ask the question of, well, what's the impact to first the customer and second to the business? And we say, is it going to make the customer's experience better? Do we really believe in this? And then secondly, is it going to grow the company profitability, I should say? And if you answer yes to both of them, then it's great and it's a high priority. If it's one over the other, we always lean towards the customer experience. And if customers are having a hard time doing this and we can identify that it's a problem, we want to go out and we want to prioritize that first. Things after that are just fun and we want to do it for the sake of moving forward, we'll go further down in the list. But having that open forum where people can bring ideas, you can share conversations, and nobody's afraid to throw anything out there on the board or even ask what other people think, is very important to prioritizing.
Cool. So thank you so much, Andrew, for that. So we've got definitely a number of questions rolling in and out on like what are the capabilities of optimizing. And again, I encourage you to go check out that website. But to answer a few of these specific questions, So one of these is around, will the free version of Optimize allow you to add custom JavaScript or HTML for testing? And the answer to that is yes. We really want to allow people to get started really solidly with testing with the free version of Optimize. So you can do everything from doing inline text editing to swapping out images to injecting custom JavaScript or HTML. And we've tried to make that really easy. We've also got a really nice ability to do emulation of different devices. So you can look at exactly what that test will look like on different devices, including using the correct user agent. Another question that came in about this is Optimize integrated with Tag Manager? So this is a really interesting answer. From a technical perspective, we're actually using a lot of Tag Manager, but you don't have to be using Google Tag Manager, although obviously we're big fans of that product as well. But the nice thing is you actually can serve the Optimize tag via Tag Manager. Now there are some trade-offs associated with that. Many of you might be kind of familiar with challenges around page hiding or flicker, and so we've done our best to make that really, really performant and also give you tools to make sure that you minimize that flicker. We've done a lot of work on the latency side of this as well, so you can use an asynchronous version of that and try to really keep your landing page as fast as possible. Choose how long you're willing to wait if you need to wait just a little bit for that the content to come back, and make sure that that experience is as performant as possible for your users. All right, and then another question that we had come in here is, in the terms of testing everything, is it really important to do A/B testing? Obviously, this is something that we really do believe that A/B testing is really important, even if you're doing personalization. One of the common things that I hear about people who just kind of jump right into doing some kind of personalization without doing testing is that several months later they'll be running a bunch of these different personalized experiences, and the teams have spent a lot of money on this, but because maybe you didn't test it first or you didn't test it as you went, you don't actually know how valuable that is in the long run. And so it's really valuable to do that A/B testing to improve the overall experience, but also when you're doing that personalization, using that testing to really justify the value, to understand the value that you're generating. And if the value, maybe your customers change or the world changes or your products change, and maybe the value goes away and you can actually stop doing that particular thing that you were doing. Customers change all the time, the environment changes, so it's really important to kind of keep doing this over time. All right, so let's see here. Make sure we've got one more question here. Actually, I've got one more here for Andrew. How important do you think it is, Andrew, to have leadership support?
It is important. I'll be honest with you, coming in, we didn't have great leadership support, and it is really incumbent on my department and myself to kind of lead the effort. Since then, I can't even begin to describe the amount of leadership support we have after we prove it's important and it works. In the past, the company had tried a testing and optimization type culture, and it kind of fell flat, and just people didn't follow through with it, and they didn't have kind of the department or the people that believed in it. You personally have to believe in it and keep driving for it. So even if you're going out and you're doing these little bitty tests and you're just working with marketing and you're saying, all right, let's test taglines on emails, getting a few small wins under your belt and getting that other department involved in it makes it a lot easier. It is very important to grow that support from the executive team, I would say. You don't necessarily have to have it day one. So I think everybody is skeptical of changing what works. But there's always opportunities out there, and just having a drive to test things and a drive to try new things and be innovative. Very important to have that, and then build the relationships with other people where they want to be part of it too. And that's probably the most important thing. If you build it with other people in the company, even if it's not at the executive ranks day one, building it with other people in the company where they believe in it and can help you along the way. Executives tend to jump on, and they love what we do now. They're constantly coming to us with ideas, in fact. So very important. Don't don't be afraid to try and build that culture though. So it starts with one person.
Nice. Thank you, Andrew. All right, so we've got time for just maybe a couple more questions. So I want to take one here from Anthony. He asks, how can we keep consistent in the long term? As the analytics department, we've been trying to push our teams to do A/B testing, and everybody got excited for a couple of weeks, launched a bunch of tests, but then stopped. And that's a really great and common question, Andrew, and I think it's awesome that you're bringing that up. So I think one of the keys there is, number one, find people who are passionate about this to start, and not just kind of like, oh, this is interesting for like a couple of weeks, but see if you can find people who really believe in the value of this. Because the reality is, like, when you run tests, you are going to have failures. There's a decent number of times, and I've seen some interesting stats on this, a large period of the time, the things that you test won't actually work out for you. And so that's where it's important to dive deeper into the results, to learn as much as you can from those. But I'm a big advocate, again, if you have lots of different ideas, don't test them all at once. Test them like over time, really trying to get into rhythm. With testing, it's far more important to get into a good rhythm rather than that is to do a lot at once. Because as you're kind of building up over time, you'll run one test, you'll kind of see how that performs, and then maybe it turns out, maybe it doesn't. Go to the next one. And it's okay to even be intentionally slow about this, right? It's okay to say we're not going to run 20 at once. Even if they're not, going to interact with each other, it's okay to just say, let's just start with one. The other half of it, though, is, if it sounds like you're the one who's really passionate about this, see if you can get other people to let you have permission to really run some of those tests yourself. Maybe they just need to sign off on them. They want to make sure that, you're on brand and you're not going to break anything. But see if they'll let you have that permission to run some of those yourselves. I think some of the modern tools that are in testing, including Optimize that we've built, really make it easy for you to run some of those powerful tests without having a lot of developer involvement. It makes it easy for you to have a lot of control over that. So see if you can be the one kind of driving that forward, and let others kind of come along for the ride. Maybe they're interested, but they don't have the time to kind of contribute as much. And that's where starting small is great, because you can do amazing things with just things like style or text, etc. And then the final question that I wanted to answer here for you, there were a couple questions about like the different kinds of targeting that Optimize allows you to do. So I can't remember if we have a really good list on our website, but our Help Center is actually up, and you can see some of the information there. But I'll just list off a few of them right now. So we've got a lot of different things involved there. So that includes everything from stuff that you might already have on your page. So that could be custom JavaScript conditions. It can be cookies. It can be query parameters. We've also got the ability to target based on the data layer from Tag Manager if you're already using Tag Manager. So that's the basic stuff that happens on the client. Beyond that, we have geographies built in. So if you have city, state, region, etc., these are all the same kind of things that you might see in Google Analytics. Those show up. We also have devices. So if you want to look at mobile versus desktop versus tablet, there's browsers and user agents. There's also, finally, the most powerful one that we're really excited about is the analytics audiences. Now, this is just available in our premium version of Google Optimize 360, but that's what lets you take a segment out of Google Analytics, turn that into an audience, and then use that on your website. And it's incredible. You can do that in like literally less than 2 minutes. It's really fun to be able to make use of that analytics data so quickly. All right, with that, we've reached the end of our time here today. We really thank you all for joining, and we'll see you next time. There's a lot more that we are looking forward to sharing with you. Please feel free to share this with your colleagues, and thanks so much. We'll talk again soon.